Redditors, do y'all have any personal stories with cryptids? 1. I was on my way to go camping, and had just crossed the Mackinac Bridge to get to Michigan's Upper Peninsula. It was storming, and just started pouring buckets of rain. It was the kind of rain that forces you to put the windshield wipers on full speed, and you still have to slow way down and strain your eyes to see. While driving up a hill, my daughter and I saw a man standing in the middle of the road. There was not great visibility with the sheets of rain, but we both pointed out the man standing in the middle of the road, and we were worried he would get hit by a car. He turned and bent, and then it was not a man. It was a huge black dog. We both thought it was a man at first, and then it was a dog, and I can't explain it. It could have just been the combination of looking up from the bottom of a hill and the rain. I just think it is odd that my daughter and I both thought we saw a man standing up at first, and then it was a dog. I stopped on one side of the road to help it, and so did a man on the other side in a truck. I am a dog groomer, and always have slip leads in the truck. I love dogs, and always stop to help when I see one in the road. But I hope that someone else would be able to help it, because my truck was stuffed with camping stuff, and the only place it could go in my truck would have been the front seat with my daughter and me. It was still in the middle of the road, looking back and forth between the man and I. I was a bit surprised to see how big it was up close. I also felt uneasy and intimidated by this animal. It looked almost like a black German shepherd, but much bigger, but also wolfish. I have been around a lot of big dogs in my profession, and if I had to guess what breed it was, I would say a wolf hybrid. The guy yelled over, asking if it was my dog, and I yelled back, no. The dog was still in the middle of the road, looking back and forth between the man and me. In my head, I was repeating, don't pick me, don't pick me, over and over, because A, I had no room in my truck and didn't want a giant strange dog that I thought was a person at first next to my kiddo, and B, it gave me the creeps. The man then yelled, "Here, boy," and patted his leg, and the dog ran off to him. Seeing the dog was being taken care of, I got back in my truck and got back on the road towards our camping destination. My daughter was telling me how it looked like a person standing in the road, and then when it turned, it was a dog. We were both very confused. If it had been just me, I would think it was the driving rain in my imagination, but my daughter saw it as well. It may not be paranormal, but it was definitely an interesting experience. 2. I was trying to sleep in a camper van with my BF in the woods of Tennessee back in the 80s. We pulled way back into the woods on an old logging road. We parked, and were putting our sleeping bags down in the back when we heard weird noises. We turned off our lights and just sat there listening. At first I thought it sounded like tropical birds, but really, really loud. Really loud. And then it sounded more like monkeys, and we could tell it was more than one or two, and they were moving towards us and spreading out like they would surround us. My BF said something like, "F this," and jumped into the driver's seat. The VW camper was a 1972 camper, and it was his baby, but we flew over the huge ruts in the dirt road. It didn't make any sense to me what happened that night, until I started listening to Bigfoot podcasts about 20 years ago. I've checked, and there are sightings on BFRO right in that area. I think we interrupted a hunt, and they were hooting and barking and trying to scare us off. It worked! It's funny because this BF was a big daredevil. It used to scare me how he'd get on his bike and draft off vehicles on the highway, or he'd stay in a place with a hurricane coming. I saw that he was just GTFO, and it made an impression on me. Occam's razor, there weren't exotic birds that turn into apes in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I didn't see them, but they sounded like some of the recordings on the Sierra Sounds. They are really the best explanation for what we heard. Pranksters could never have been so loud and fast, running through the woods in the dark. 3. IDK, if this is really a story about a cryptid or whatever. So, this is basically a skinwalker story. Yeah, pretty basic, but it was around 2020-2021, or the COVID era, and me and my buddy, T, decided to carry shears and a machete he got from his birthday out into the woods to reopen a massive canal that had about 3 smaller trees laying in it. They weren't thick or anything, just horribly decayed and broken. These trees had created an almost weird dam that would reroute or push the water to the side of canal, basically making it a road a perfect trail for dirt bikes, four-wheelers, etc. So there we are, staring at the trees we were about to chop down and get appraised for. We just wanted to talk about it, lol. We get to work, and we get about 3 hours in and have gotten about 1/3 or 2/5 of it done, and both me and T just hear this god-awful screech. We both look in awe as we lay low behind the tree dam. We are in a 9-foot deep canal with the trees hanging off each side and reaching the bottom, so we have good cover. And we just see this creature that is almost human, but its body looks like it's wearing more of a rotting skin suit than its actual flesh. We didn't move, we didn't speak, we didn't breathe right. We both waited and watched as it slowly walked away, it making horrible noises that sounded like a mix of a dog yelping and cat hissing. It disappeared from our sight and booked it back home. Now this canal is about a mile long, so it isn't just a quick trip. We both never stopped running, and we forgot the cooler and shears. We made it back at around 7 p.m. and just sat there in his living room, petrified. The skinwalker part I DK about. It's the common thing my folk and friends talk about when it comes to their cryptids and supernatural beliefs. But this creature had a dog-like face, pale skin, narrow limbs, and a weirdly, almost primitive-like clothing fur. A few years ago in South Alabama, I lived across the street from pretty dense woods. I would often walk around them in the day. It was such a beautiful place. But I always felt a certain level of uneasiness when I was out there. I was used to being in the woods, but in that area the feeling was just off. It took me a bit to notice, but even though there was a decent population of birds where I lived, there were never any in those woods. After about a month of going into the woods on a nearly daily basis, I had developed a routine where I would walk fairly deep in the woods until I reached this flat area with 4 trees overlooking a drop-off, and I would just chill there for a bit before walking back. Well, one day I made my way to that spot, and there was what I assumed to be an old metal sign or something on each of the 4 trees. They were rusted and weathered to the point where you couldn't read what was on them. But why only on those trees that I always stopped at? Why not any of the others? And who could see me stop there? That freaked me out enough to not go back. But what sealed the deal was just a few nights later I was in the kitchen with my, at the time, girlfriend around midnight, and we suddenly hear screaming coming from outside. It was so loud we thought it was right outside. We flipped the porch light on and saw nobody was there, so we walked out, and when we did, we realized the screams were coming from the woods. And it wasn't like one person screaming, it was multiple, all at the same time. These haunting, moaning, blood-curdling screams that sounded like people but at the same time sounded so inhuman. I thought maybe it could be a bunch of foxes or bobcats, but I'm familiar with the sounds they make, and those were not this. To this day, I'm unsure of what it really was out there. But one thing is for sure, I'm done with the woods 5. It was last Sunday morning, while we were driving from Nana and Papa's house, and we were in Butler County, Ohio. I know because we had just passed the Butler County water tower 1 to 2 minutes ago, and we were driving on a bridge, and I was looking out the window trying to see if I can spot anything unusual like a UFO or UFOs or something like that, when I saw something 10 to 15 away from the bridge. After looking at it for a couple seconds, it disappeared behind some trees. Description: it looked more like it was gliding rather than flying, as I swear remembering it not flapping. Its wings. Gliding animals like flying squirrels and flying snakes do not actually have wings. They instead have expanded ribs that make them look like they have wings. It was about 3 feet in height, and was about the height of the bridge off the ground, though probably higher. It was green, and looked more reptilian than bird-like. One of the first thoughts that came to my head was a flying dragon, which again does not actually fly, but instead just glides. It is native to southeastern Asia and southern India, making a sighting of it in Butler County extremely unusual. It's also only up to 8 inches long, while the one I saw was around 3 feet in height. Strangely, the one I saw looks like the xianglong, a species of gliding lizard that lived in China but went extinct, making this thing, assuming that's what I saw, out of time, out of height. The only evidence we have of the lizard ever existing was a skeleton found in China that was 6 inches long, but that was probably a juvenile, which might make this one a large adult. However, I feel like adults don't grow that much bigger than juveniles, maybe a couple inches to a foot, but again not much bigger, and out of place. Theories I have. Bird. I might have just seen a regular bird, and I was just remembering things wrong, like it not flapping, and or how green and reptilian-like it was. But I do know this: if it was flapping its wings, and or it wasn't that green and reptilian-like, I probably wouldn't have gotten all excited and thought it was some kind of cryptid or something. I tried to look up birds that are 3 feet in height or similar and live in Butler County, or at least Ohio as a whole. But I didn't find anything that looked similar to what I saw. Plane or other man-made aerial machines. This is the theory that makes the least sense, as it wasn't a plane, as it was flying too close to the ground, too close to the bridge, and was too small to be one or anything else meant for a person to fly. A drone makes the most sense, but I feel like I would have seen the propellers spinning or something like that. A gliding lizard, xianglong, or a different type of unknown animal. This is obviously the cryptid explanation, as the gliding lizard lives in southern India and southeastern Asia and is up to 8 inches in height, much smaller than what I saw. And the Xianglong has been extinct for a long while. I can only assume. Other than that, I don't know what else to say, since I basically already explained it to you. 6. Not sure if it's really considered a cryptid, but I saw a ghost once. For some context, I was at my cousin's house. It's 200 years old. There has been a reported UFO sighting there like 20 years ago and a shit run of ghost sightings. Some from my cousins, some from their friends or nannies. Okay. So I was babysitting my cousins with my older sister, and after all the kids went to bed, me and my sister were hanging out in the living room. We were on the phone with my sister's best friends, and we were just talking and having a good time. Me and my sister were sitting face to face with each other. Then my cousin's dog started flipping out. He was going crazy. He even broke the living room door. I didn't think anything of it though, because he's insane, like he's jumped out of windows a bunch of times. And then I saw it, behind my sister a few steps up in the kitchen. The living room is slightly lower than the rest of the house by like 5 steps. I saw a ghost. It looked like a normal person, but like made out of fog, and I freaked out and I told her, and she was pissed. She was like, shut the hell up. So I was like, haha, I was joking. Then a few minutes later, my aunt came home and my dad picked us up. I got in the car and was like, Sarah, I was not joking. Then I totally forgot about it for months until the last day of summer. My sister was sleeping over her friend's house on my last day of summer. Her school starts later than mine, and she left something at home, so me and my mom drove it over to her, but on the way there we passed a road that had a sidewalk, and I saw the exact same ghost type thing again, but this time its head turned and it looked at me then disappeared. I was freaking out. My mom was like, oh my god, are you okay? Then I told her, and she honestly believed me, because I was freaking out. 7. Where I live, there's something that looms everywhere. Lately this thing has been appearing around me. I was sitting at a friend's, and both of us noticed out of the corner of our eyes a black shape move fast, kind of like through a glass patio door. It was the size of a cat, but it had no definition to it. Just like a black, out-of-focus blob, basically. It was strange because it ran as soon as it was noticed. My friend's cat also noticed it and stared at that spot very uncomfortably for minutes afterwards. Next night, I'm sitting in my room upstairs watching TV, and I had my left foot kind of hanging off the edge of the bed, and I'm just in a lazy, relaxed pose. All of a sudden, I feel something kind of pushing against my foot like it's a cat that stands up and puts their paws on you like it wants to be pet. Well, that's what immediately came to mind. Then I realized, wait, I don't have any animals in my home. Now, as soon as I noticed the pressure on my foot, I again, from my shallow peripheral vision, seen a black blob shoot down to the floor. This is kind of a collective, maybe I'm just seeing shit, collective mention, that I've been seeing a black little ball at random times every other day. But it could just be nothing, but I thought it's worth adding. I'm pretty sudé cognitively, so there's no reason for me to be hallucinating these instances. It only validates it more when other people see the same thing when these things occur. Plus, a cat, lol. I could type for days all the weird, unexplainable things I've seen just in the past 6 or so years. 8. I've seen one also. My girlfriend at the time, her sister, and I all went to pick up my girlfriend's sister's boyfriend from work one night. This was in a very rural area, by the way. On the way there, we saw something that looked like a Lycan from Underworld run in front of my girlfriend's sister's Tahoe and stare at us with glowing red fluorescent eyes as if we're driving in slow-mo as it cleared our path. It was fast. I thought it was a very large wild hog or bear, but it was too slender and uniquely shaped. We were in a Tahoe, and it was at eye level with us, and we were elevated. So I would have to say it was around 6 to 7 feet tall, standing up with long muscular arms and neck, large shoulders, and unproportioned hind legs like a dog, but bigger. We all looked at each yelling, WTF was that? But we were in such shock we didn't think about what it was until we got home. And boy did we have a story to tell. I saw every animal you could see in Arkansas. There is no mistaking this for anything out there. It is what it is.